This community is traumatized.
The hardest thing was seeing what the bear had done to my granddaughter.
The bear targeted a group of elementary school students and their teachers.
4 are critically injured, with a male teacher taking the brunt of the attack.
If you have watched any of my videos, then you know that the absolute best defense in grizzly country is traveling in groups. But recently, near Bella Coola, British Columbia, a mother grizzly attacked a group of 20 elementary school kids and teachers, injuring 11 people, most of them children. So if traveling in groups is considered safe, then in what universe does this attack even make sense? What can be done to keep people, including school children, safe in grizzly bear country? And did British Columbia really eliminate their very best tool for keeping people safe when they banned grizzly bear hunts in late 2017? Let's discuss, and in the process, demystify this incredibly unique and deeply troubling attack on a group of school children near Bella Coola, British Columbia. As the parent of elementary school children who travel with me every single year in grizzly country, the recent attack on a group of 4th and 5th graders near Bella Coola is an attack I cannot afford to ignore. There is no other way to slice it. This attack is incredibly troubling and could have been much, much worse had it not been for the heroic actions of a handful of teachers. With the victims receiving the care that they need, law enforcement and conservation officers are now primarily focused on locating the sow that was involved in the attack, though that is likely to be a very difficult and hazardous task. But more on that in just a minute. Because emergency responders are rightly prioritizing the privacy and needs of the victims, there are some pretty significant holes in the Bella Coola narrative. And while some details may still emerge, it is unlikely that we are ever going to get a complete sequential account of what happened that day. These kinds of attacks are incredibly explosive and chaotic, making it difficult for even the victims to accurately fit all of the pieces together. And for that reason, we are going to have to accept that some of the variables are going to remain unknown. Unfortunately, fidgety journalists and internet pundits have been busy filling the information vacuum with a crap ton of unrelated stories and unhelpful conjecture. Today, I want to sift through the noise, discuss what we know, what we don't know, and address the factors which combined to produce one of the most disturbing bear attacks in history. I have also included a link in the description to the GoFundMe page set up by the Nuhawk Nation and the community of Bella Coola to help the victims and their families get through what is almost certain to be a long and difficult recovery. With that said, let's deconstruct what we actually know about the attack and see what we can learn from the seemingly unprecedented event. Early in the afternoon on November 20th, 2025, a hiking group composed of 20 people, including 16 4th and 5th grade students and 4 of their teachers, left Akwakta Elementary School in Bella Coola and crossed the highway for a midday hiking field trip in the 4-mile area. After hiking for an unspecified distance, the group paused for a lunch break at around 1:30 p.m. local time. It was at this point, as the group began eating their lunch, that a grizzly bear charged from heavy brush and attacked. The exact sequence of events is still pretty milky, but we know at some point that the sow grizzly charged towards a group of students, and a male teacher leapt at the grizzly bear and began punching, kicking, and gouging its eyes. Now, this is a strategy that I have discussed in detail in the past. Physically contending with a grizzly bear almost never deters aggression, instead supercharging it. However, while punching and kicking a grizzly bear has almost no chance of discouraging aggression, it does tend to focus and or redirect the bear's aggression, at least temporarily, towards the individual throwing punches. We know that the teacher that physically engaged the bear, quote, took the brunt of the attack and is one of 2 critically injured victims. Now, I'm not going to try and read his mind or speculate as to why, in the chaos, whatever dominoes fell, he chose to engage the bear. If his goal was to deter the bear, punching and kicking had almost no chance of succeeding. However, if his goal was to redirect the bear's aggression away from the kids, then it would seem that he was mostly successful. According to the mother of one of the students who escaped serious injury, as the male teacher leapt into action and attempted to fight off the mother grizzly, her son is said to have been close enough that he could have reached out his hand and touched the attacking bear. According to secondhand accounts from community members, it was at this point that two other teachers began spraying the bear in the face with bear spray at a distance of less than 3 feet, but without immediate success. And in the chaos, as you might expect, many of the teachers and students were themselves hit with bear spray. We also know that many of the students ran, desperately seeking safety. At some point, we know that one of the teachers managed to fire a bear banger. Though we don't know which teacher or exactly how long the attack lasted, what we do know is that they were eventually successful in repelling this bear and contacting emergency responders. We know that the male teacher who physically engaged the bear suffered extensive injuries, including being partially scalped. And two children, one young girl and one young boy, have reportedly suffered significant head trauma. And in the case of the third seriously injured child, I have not found any concrete information regarding their injuries. Which brings up a very important point. A full accounting of the group's injuries has not, and almost certainly will not, be made publicly available. And because of that fact, it's also not known if all or some portion of the 11 injured parties were directly injured by the bear or suffered indirect injuries in consequence of the attack. To my knowledge, there has never been an attack quite like this one. As a hard rule, bears do not attack large groups unless some very specific environmental and circumstantial factors align. With the help of attack site photos, as well as the accounts from survivors, their families, and community members, combined with a very similar attack that occurred in 2011, where a single grizzly bear attacked a group of 7 teenagers, we can construct the most accurate analysis of the Bella Coola attack yet available. Beyond the shocking number of victims, the aspect of this story that is most striking to me is the timing of the mother grizzly's attack. Most grizzly bear attacks, especially when mother bears are involved, occur suddenly from one footfall to the next as victims are moving through the landscape. The fact that this group had seemingly settled in and begun eating lunch suggests a curious delay in the bear's aggression. Most grizzly bears will hear or smell people coming and typically leave long before a conflict can occur. But more than that, there's absolutely nothing in my personal experience that would suggest that a group of 16 grade schoolers are even capable of moving silently through the landscape. I fully expect that these kids were talking to their friends, their teachers, talking about Pokemon, I don't know what. That's just what kids do. What I don't believe is that they were moving silently through the landscape. But yet, the bear seemingly didn't hear the group approaching, or strangely decided not to leave. From what I can tell, there may have been creeks or rivers in the area that may have provided some ambient noise that might have concealed the group's approach. But still, a group of 16 kids ought to be pretty noisy. The atypical timing of the attack suggested the bear may have hesitated, perhaps waiting for the group to pass, only to feel surrounded when a group of 20 people paused near its location. But it's also possible that the bear was sleeping when the group arrived. Believe it or not, this is actually a pretty common occurrence. Tyler Johnson and his dad Chris stumbled upon a sleeping grizzly in tall grass before it charged Chris and attacked Tyler. And if you've watched my recent conversation with bear biologist Tom Smith about the possibility of grizzlies returning to Utah, you'll also recall his experience of walking right past a sleeping boar while on a research trip in Alaska. The bear was so out of it that Tom even contemplated investigating it up close, until he noticed it stirring. More than that, in 2011, the unsuspecting group of teenagers that I previously referenced were hiking down a creek bed in Alaska in order to circumvent dense vegetation, but stumbled upon a sleeping grizzly at a distance of 20 to 30 feet. The sleeping bear then sprung to life and charged the teen at the head of the group. But being young, impulsive, and untested in the wilderness, the rest of the group scattered. That bear would go on to injure 4 of those 7 teenagers, 2 of them seriously. Mother bears, like their human counterparts, need to sleep, especially if, as Conservation Officer Kevin Van Dame has stated, the mother bear involved in the Bella Coola attack is believed to be struggling with a pre-existing injury. Looking at the images of the area around the attack site, the area appears to be heavily wooded with thick undergrowth, which is typical of the Pacific Northwest. Areas with thick undergrowth are often used by bears to rest. The thick brush provides them cover, concealment, and security while bears are at their most vulnerable. Again, I am not saying that the bear was for sure sleeping when the school group arrived and set up for lunch, only that the known elements of the attack suggest that it's a distinct possibility. But more than providing concealment for resting bears, heavy brush and tight quarters can negate much of the preventative value of traveling in groups, because from a bear's perspective, thick cover obscures the true number of humans present. Even mother grizzly bears, who can be extremely aggressively protective of their young, essentially never attack large groups unless people are either spread out or their true numbers are concealed by the environment. In such a circumstance, if people panic and scatter rather than grouping together and deploying their deterrence, bears have been known to injure multiple people. That is precisely what happened in Alaska in 2011 and what happened more recently in Bella Coola, British Columbia. Now that said, bears are not all alike, and their individual reactions to individual encounters are among the non-predictable variables that may work for you or against you. For example, in 2016, Phil Shoemaker and his 2 clients stumbled upon a large coastal brown bear that subsequently charged and grounded Phil's clients. The bear did not, however, attack, instead standing menacingly above Phil's defenseless clients. While this scene was playing out, tall grass and cover likely concealed Phil's location from the bear, despite the fact that he was only 12 to 15 feet away. The uncommon result being that the bear didn't notice or recognize Phil as a threat, even as Phil shot it repeatedly. The fact that the bear didn't harm Phil's clients had absolutely nothing to do with Phil or anything that he did. Rather, it demonstrates that circumstances and bears are not all alike. It was pure luck that the bear that charged Phil's clients neither injured them nor targeted Phil. And those 2 extremely fortunate circumstances, among others, combined with an ideal shooting position, gifted Phil a luxurious amount of time to use his extremely ill-chosen 9mm pistol to intervene. Phil's clients, by going to ground and cowering rather than running or fighting back, conveyed that they were not a threat to the bear, which almost certainly helped avoid further aggression. It's also a decision which contrasts starkly with the recent attack near Bella Coola, as well as the 2011 attack on a group of teenagers, where we know that participants panicked, attempted to flee, or physically engaged the bear. And I can only imagine the level of chaos that must have erupted when this mother grizzly charged this group of young kids. Add several injuries to the mix, a teacher punching and kicking a bear, and bear spray and bear bangers being fired, and I really feel for these kids and their teachers. It would have been an absolutely terrifying experience, one that would have caused most adults to panic. Case in point, here's a bunch of so-called professional hunters when they were charged by a mother grizzly. I have young kids. One of them is the exact age of the kids involved in this attack. No reasonable person can blame these young children for behaving the way they did, which makes the actions of their teachers even more praiseworthy. If you travel with young children in bear country, then you should just assume that they are going to panic if you encounter an aggressive animal. Whether that be a squirrel, a bird, a bear, or a lion, it doesn't matter. And again, it's not their fault. The instinctual fight or flight reflex is incredibly powerful, and counteracting it takes a level of control and maturity that cannot be reasonably expected from young children. But that doesn't change the fact that attempting to run or flee during a charge or an attack consistently triggers a pursuit reflex among predators, including bears. That is one of the primary topics that I discussed in my previous video reacting to a man in Yellowstone National Park approaching a group of 5 wolves. If you haven't had a chance to watch that video yet, then make sure to check it out. In truth, we have to have a conversation about what activities are appropriate for children. Now, I don't take my kids into primitive areas in grizzly country because I know it's not reasonable to place that kind of responsibility on their shoulders. So for everyone's safety, we stick to populated areas and shorter popular hikes. All adults in our group are equipped with appropriate deterrents, and we regularly review what we're going to do if we see a bear. Now, please understand that I am not criticizing the teachers involved in the Bella Coola attack. Their home is grizzly country. This is the reality that they live every single day of their lives. And their kids deserve to experience the wonders of nature. And to my knowledge, prior to November 20th, 2025, No group of 20 people had ever been attacked by a bear before. There was no reason to think that something like this was going to happen. But the teachers were still prepared. They had their deterrence, they had layered their defense, and from all appearances, it seems like they did everything in their power to keep the kids safe. If you plan to travel in bear country, ask yourself, are your chosen activities appropriate for everybody in your party? I also advise that all adults carry and know how to use appropriate deterrents, and that the adults bracket the kids in your group. This is done by placing responsible adults both at the head of the group as well as at the rear, spacing other adults within the group as numbers allow. It's also critical to teach both kids and adults that if you encounter a bear or other potentially dangerous animal, that they should group up, stand together, use deterrence if necessary, and never, ever run. Again, acknowledging that in the moment, kids may instinctually flee, which means that the adults need to accept serious responsibility for everyone's safety and know how to engage both bears and other potentially dangerous animals. Again, if you need more information on how to engage bears and other potentially dangerous wildlife, then make sure to subscribe and stay tuned to At Home in Wild Spaces. The bear that was involved in the Bella Coola attack was a mother grizzly, likely an injured mother grizzly, with 2 cubs. She wasn't just protecting her personal space, she was protecting her cubs from what she perceived as a threat. And the chaos of 20 people all around her, many of them running frantically, combined with the physical attacks of one of the teachers, would have sent her anxiety and her aggression into the stratosphere. Which is likely the reason why she did not immediately respond to the bear spray. Again, bears are not all the same, and whether you're using bear spray, bangers, or bullets, they don't all respond to deterrence the same way either. Some bears are very easy to deter. Others, like injured mother grizzlies, can be very, very difficult to deter. Which is why the teacher's actions were so crucial. Again, I'm not going to pretend that their response was perfect, mainly because I don't have all of the details, and also because nobody makes perfect decisions during a crisis. But it's clear that they were prepared and had the courage to do what needed to be done. Now, I know that Canada doesn't currently allow citizens to carry handguns for self-defense in bear country. Whether that is the right or wrong policy decision is a conversation that we absolutely should have. But the more pressing question right now is whether or not bear spray and a bear banger was the right toolkit for this attack. Now, I know that this is also one of the internet's favorite arguments, and as I have stated in the past, I employ both bear spray and an appropriate firearm when I'm in grizzly country. A properly layered defense is always going to be the best strategy, so long as people are qualified to use the defensive tools that they carry. But there was no way that frantically firing a gun with 16 hysterical kids running around was ever going to be a good idea. In this case, using non-lethals was absolutely the right move. After confronting this school group, the mother grizzly and her cubs bolted. And I expect that she's going to want to get her cubs as far away from the conflict site as possible. Conservation officers have got traps out. They've been meticulously canvassing the area. They've captured at least 8 bears at this point, but I expect that this mother grizzly is not going to be so easily fooled by bear traps. That doesn't change the fact that searching for a stressed out, injured mother grizzly is one of the most dangerous things that conservation officers can do. And in fact, the night before I was set to release this video, conservation officers announced that they have abandoned the search for the mother grizzly involved in the Bella Coola attack. And for everyone's safety, I sure hope that this mother bear keeps her cubs far away from people in the future. Now, let's talk about a very popular claim that has been filling the information vacuum following this and every grizzly bear attack. There are a number of groups and no small number of people that claim if grizzly bears were hunted, that they would be less likely to show aggression towards people. With grizzly bears still federally protected in the lower 48 states, following Alberta's ban on hunting grizzlies in 2006 and British Columbia's ban in 2017, there are only a few places left in North America where grizzlies are hunted, namely Alaska and Canada's Yukon and Northwest Territories. This means that grizzly bears enjoy broad protections across most of their range, and that is a problem according to hunting groups, which claim that attacks and other conflicts with grizzly bears are on the rise because bears are losing their fear of people. Their hypothesis is as follows: hunting bears teaches bears to fear humans, When bears fear humans, they are less likely to attack them. This claim has become so ubiquitous with the internet's bear defense chatter that it's become the standard filler following attacks and other conflicts, and it has been given considerable airtime following the attack near Bella Coola. But is there any evidence that hunting grizzly bears makes people safer? Let's take a look. Based on figures provided by the BC Conservation Officer Service, the picture is not as clear as the internet would have you believe. Shocker, I know. But it also doesn't mean that hunting can't be a viable tool. British Columbia is home to approximately half of Canada's 26,000 to 29,000 brown bears. And it has a population of more than 5.5 million people. It's also the locality which most recently enacted a ban on grizzly bear hunts, which should mean that any clear relationship between a ban on hunting grizzlies and grizzly bear aggression should be easy to find. But as we look at the figures, we really only find more questions. I remind you that British Columbia's ban on grizzly bear hunting went into effect in late 2017. And the graph clearly shows a significant increase in conflicts in 2018, and especially in 2019, before returning to figures which mirror those from 2016 and 2017, before the ban was enacted. If you look back even further, starting in 2012, you'll notice that grizzly bear-related calls to conservation officers rose for a number of years before the ban was put in place, but then fluctuated wildly between 2018 and 2023, before again dropping to pre-ban numbers. But more than that, the year with the highest number of grizzly bear-related calls, 2023, had the lowest incidence of attacks, where 2 of the years with the highest number of attacks occurred before the ban was put in place. It is also important to keep in mind that British Columbia's human population has risen significantly over time, and more people sharing the landscape with bears means more opportunities for conflicts. But again, looking at BC's data, grizzly bear attack trends don't exactly mirror BC's population trends either. The clear implication is that human-bear conflict dynamics are far more complex than the internet's gossips and pundits seem to understand. However, we do know that certain large predators do respond to hunting pressure by maintaining greater distances between humans and livestock. For example, there is strong evidence that African lions learned to fear the Maasai people, who hunted lions for centuries, both to protect their cattle and as a rite of passage. But is there any evidence that bears respond to hunting pressure the same way? Or are they fundamentally a different animal? It's a conversation that I've had with both bear biologists and bear attack survivors over the years, and it's a topic that I'm going to address in a forthcoming video. So make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get instant access the moment that video drops. Now, you may have noticed that my video was published a few weeks after the Bella Coola attack occurred, and there's a good reason for that. Literally anyone can make a reaction video and then spout their nonsensical opinions. BS merchants are making a killing with that exact format. It takes far more effort and expertise to provide reliable information. In fact, it takes so much work that the vast majority of the internet is not even interested in doing what is necessary to provide reliable information. And that is why I want to thank my Wild Spaces team members. These guys and girls are the cream of the crop. If you have a passion for the facts and reliable information, then consider clicking join below this video or join our team over on Patreon. And if a monthly membership is not right for you, then please consider making a one-time donation to At Home in Wild Spaces by clicking thanks below this video. Until next time, this is Mike, reminding you to stay safe, stay informed, and make sure to check out these other videos from At Home in Wild Spaces.